Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart. 2026 is just a few short days away. 2026 is the 40th anniversary for The Legend of Zelda, and there's actually a lot of reasons that continue to come out to suggest that this 40th anniversary year might just be the biggest celebration for The Legend of Zelda we have ever gotten, which can mean some very significant releases and updates on upcoming projects that will leave the Zelda fanbase totally hyped and excited. And so that's what we're getting into today, why this is going to be such a big deal. Now before going forward, let me simply point out that I have this goal to reach 60,000 subscribers, so if you find yourself enjoying my content, yes, subscribing, liking, commenting, that all would make a huge difference. So I thank you in advance for the support. But let's now talk about why the 40th anniversary is going to be absolutely huge here. I can understand why some people might be a little skeptical actually, because we look at Zelda's 35th anniversary, and what we got was a Game & Watch, which was okay, and technically they also released Skyward Sword HD, which is something, and they also did give us more information on Tears of the Kingdom back then, which was called Breath of the Wild 2, or the sequel to Breath of the Wild, but there was a nice little teaser there, and of course there were some other things, but those are the big standouts. Maybe not the biggest thing ever. It's definitely a lot lesser than what we saw for Mario's 35th anniversary and also Mario's 40th anniversary, as we're seeing now with all these different game releases and such, but it was something. And then we go to Zelda's 30th anniversary, and that one was even lesser. We still had the merchandising, the amiibos, the concerts, that was all there, but there weren't any significant releases. However, what we did see though, was that for that summer, E3 2016, Nintendo did their huge initial blowout for Breath of the Wild, where we saw all that significant Great Plateau gameplay. It was an amazing demonstration of the game, and it was very exciting. So at least what we've seen from both the 35th and 30th anniversary is that these years Nintendo's at least used them to show off the next big Zelda project, which is certainly something. But then we look at the 25th anniversary. At 25th anniversary, it was huge. There were concerts, merchandising, just like the other big anniversary years, but the biggest things were actual significant game releases. We saw Skyward Sword come out for the Nintendo Wii, an original Zelda game coming out, and it was even branded as the 25th anniversary game. And then also earlier in that year, we saw the release for Ocarina of Time 3D for the Nintendo 3DS. Two huge Zelda releases. Zelda fans were eating really well for the 25th anniversary. And so you might look at how Nintendo pushes Zelda every 5 years and say, yeah, the 25th anniversary was huge, that was probably the best celebration yet, but you look at more recent anniversary celebrations and it's certainly lesser. Why should we think that the 40th anniversary is going to compare to the 25th or perhaps even be bigger and better? Well, there's several reasons. One, the Switch 2 has just come out, and we look at the history of things here. Early on, for every single generation, Nintendo makes sure to not only have some kind of Zelda release, but to also show off a big Zelda project. Sometimes it's one and the same, sometimes it's not, but Nintendo makes sure to do at least something along those lines to start every generation. We have not gone that yet for the Switch 2. No, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom Switch 2 editions do not count. Those are minor enhancements for games that have been around for years. They are barely impacting sales here, nor did they take away too many development resources. There needs to be something else. So, for this reason alone, let's forget the idea of there being a 40th anniversary. It makes sense to think that we're either A, getting a big brand new Zelda release in 2026, or at least an epic reveal for an upcoming Zelda project. At least that. And so we also factor in that we're entering this next big 5-year increment of an anniversary, and how we look at the last few big anniversary celebrations, there's always at least been an epic reveal for an upcoming Zelda project. At the very least, we're looking at a reveal, but when you also think about how it's the next generation, it makes sense for Nintendo to go a little bit harder here when we consider that both events are coinciding. But there are more reasons to expect some significant Zelda stuff in 2026. The next big point is that we have the upcoming live-action Zelda movie. Now, this is coming out in the first half of 2027, which is after 2026. However, they are going to have to start to market the Zelda movie, likely towards the end of 2026. So that alone is going to be some Zelda goodness for the 40th anniversary. But it goes beyond that here. It's not just about directly advertising the movie, but also advertising the overall Zelda brand. We see Nintendo do this across their different IP, where they put out different releases and advertisements for the overall series in lead up to an even bigger event. They did it for Donkey Kong. We had Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. We had the Donkey Kong expansion to Super Nintendo World. And it all led up to the release for Donkey Kong Bonanza. They did it for Pikmin 4. They had the Pikmin Blue mobile game. They had Pikmin in the Nintendo Parks. They had Pikmin 3 Deluxe. They had Pikmin 1 and 2, all leading up to Pikmin 4. You look at Mario, we've seen all the Mario Lego lines, we've seen the opening to the Nintendo Universal Park, we've seen various Mario releases in lead up to the Mario movie, and then even afterwards with Mario Wonder, and now we're seeing something very similar this time around as well. So many different Mario games or Mario Universe games are coming out. Even this time for the Mario Galaxy movie, Nintendo literally put out Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 for Switch 1 and Switch 2. And they also have Yoshi and the Mysterious Book coming out early next year, which will likely also fuel a lot of the excitement for Yoshi in the Mario Galaxy movie. And it's well documented that with the first Mario movie, Mario game sales overall increased significantly. And so Nintendo has seen how all this cross-promotion greatly benefits everything, and so there's even more reason to think with the upcoming Zelda movie that they're going to go even bigger for the 40th anniversary. So we have several reasons just from that right there to think that Nintendo's going to go harder than usual for Zelda's 40th. But we actually have even more signs beyond that. Firstly, we've already started to see some literal announcements for the 40th anniversary. Nintendo's already announced this collaboration with LEGO to put out an Ocarina of Time LEGO set having to do with the final battle between Link and Ganondorf. That is a huge LEGO reveal, and it's very much in line with what Nintendo did for Mario in lead up to the Mario movie. And so at the very least, we know that we're going to be getting Zelda movie news, and we're going to see this epic Zelda LEGO set. But we're not even in 2026 yet, and we know this much already. But what's fascinating is that within the past week, we've actually gotten multiple interviews to excite the Zelda fan base, and perhaps to tease even more. So as we talked about a few days ago, Monolith Soft put out a new interview on their site. This is a Nintendo developer. They are responsible for the Xenoblade games and also support work for a lot of big Nintendo projects, including the Zelda series. And there they talked about how Monolith Soft has increasingly improved their relationship with the Zelda team. Monolith Soft does support work for Zelda. They worked on Skyward Sword, Breath of the Wild, and Tears of the Kingdom. And the overall implication by the interview is that Monolith Soft continues to improve their relationship with the Zelda team, and they're going to be taking on more and more of a significant role with developing mainline Zelda. Does that mean they're simply going to put in more resources into helping out the Zelda games made by the Zelda team, or are they going to work on their own thing? It could be a little bit of both. Possibly Monolith Soft could be responsible for developing some kind of remake. Monolith Soft has shown to be pretty good at that when we take a look at Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, but we also know about their own project that they've been hiring for many years. We've seen their own recruitment pages for that. We also have seen LinkedIn profile listings showing that they have been working on an action game, and based off the recruitment pages, we also know it to be based off a fantasy medieval setting. And then, yes, there are rumors and leaks suggesting that this is in the works. We don't know what it is. It might not even be Zelda related, but if it's at least fantasy medieval, it could at least be something that appeals to the Zelda fan base. And there's a suggestion that this project, codenamed Legacy, that's from the leaks that have all been proven true in terms of Nintendo codenames, there's reason to think that it's coming out relatively soon. We've even heard rumors from Nash Weedle, who has gotten many things right over this past year for Switch 2, like Indiana Jones, Donkey Kong Bonanza, a variety of details about Metroid Prime 4, and so much more. He said he has heard that Monolith Soft is preparing for an announcement in an early year Nintendo Direct, which could coincide with some initial Zelda anniversary announcements. And so that's an interesting possibility there, but at the very least, the fact that we've gotten this interview to end the year talking about Zelda development is contributing to this Zelda anniversary conversation. But another interview, perhaps an even bigger interview, is an interview with Fujibayashi and Aonuma about Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. And in there, this also just came out like a couple days ago, they talk about how there are some inspirations that they've taken from Age of Imprisonment for future Zelda projects, and so we should be thinking about that when playing Age of Imprisonment. So that's already teasing something for the future, But Aonuma even goes so far as to say that he wanted to be the first to bring Zelda to the Switch too, suggesting that they have something that's close to ready. They could have perhaps beaten Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment to the chase in terms of being the first Zelda game on the console. And so this is also coming out right before the new year, going into Zelda's 40th anniversary, further suggesting that there are plans for Zelda to be heavily involved throughout the year of 2026. Now, if you've been watching my different videos in the past, you probably already know that I think Nintendo is working on an Ocarina of Time remake. I feel like there's been multiple interviews where Aonuma has teased it. I think it makes a lot of sense to remake some kind of Zelda game in an ambitious fashion, by the way, not like just an HD upscale of Ocarina of Time 3D, but an ambitious reworking to show off the visuals of the Switch 2, get Zelda fans invested early on, and also have some sort of significant anniversary game or something coming out around the movie. So if not in the anniversary year, a little bit afterwards, but this is something they could potentially show off at least in 2026. But it wouldn't even be totally surprised if we see something beyond this. Like, we get the anniversary release game, whatever that is. I think there's actually a pretty good chance that it could very well be the Ocarina of Time remake, even if it's something else. We get some sort of anniversary release, and Nintendo still teases a future Zelda project. They give us insight into what the future Zelda could be. Now, personally, I think if we were going to be getting an ambitious remake, like say a remake for Ocarina of Time, then that kind of accomplishes both. It does show off the graphical potential of Zelda on Switch 2, and it's an epic remake. So both those things would kind of accomplish both, and they wouldn't actually have to tease the next Zelda literally by saying, hey, this is in development. They could probably still mention it at some point, but this alone, I think, would be pretty significant. Would it be as significant as what we saw for the 25th anniversary? Alone, I can certainly see debate there, because at least when we go back to the 25th anniversary, we had a brand new Zelda title and a fairly ambitious remastering for Ocarina of Time. Now, I do think this Ocarina of Time remake would be a very big deal, a much bigger deal than what Ocarina of Time 3D was for 3DS back then, but when we also think about how there was a brand new title in Skyward Sword, it's hard to think that just an Ocarina of Time remake, as exciting as that would alone make Zelda's 40th anniversary the biggest, best one yet. I think there would need to be more, and I've already kind of hinted at how there would be more, because also they would be talking about the live-action Zelda movie, which is pretty huge. But also, I expect to see announcements for the Zelda Park. I believe the next expansion to Super Nintendo World is The Legend of Zelda. When I was there a couple months ago, it was pretty apparent to me that the next expansion is going to be for Legend of Zelda. They have plenty of space to expand the park, not to mention that they've already kind of pre-set things up, because you do see in one of the main shops what they have in all these different stained glass windows is Mario, Donkey Kong, and Zelda. And we also think about how the Zelda movie is coming out. We have the Zelda Lego sets. It's very much how they handle things for Mario. They have the Mario stuff for the park, the Legos, the movies. It's all connected. And just thinking about things logically, what would be the next expansion to Super Nintendo World? It's not Super Mario World, right? So they do have to go beyond just Mario Universe stuff. Zelda really is that next big IP from the beginning. Mario, Donkey Kong, and then Zelda. And so Zelda Park news, Zelda movie news, and a big remake, and then other things like concerts, merchandising like with this epic Lego set we've seen already announced, all that I think would make for a pretty amazing anniversary year. And at that point, I think we can have a fair debate about what's the better anniversary year, the 40th or the 25th. But something I want to point out here, I am saying it's going to be the biggest, and so when I say that, I mean from like a sales perspective. Right now, the brand of Nintendo is way stronger than it was 15 years ago, and so the overall amount of attention and sales and conversation about Zelda is going to be so much greater for the 40th anniversary than it was for the 25th. I fully expect that this epic remake will probably outsell the combined sales for Ocarina of Time 3D and Skyward Sword. And then we also think about everything else with the park and the movie and all, that alone would be enough. And yet, I still think there's a strong possibility there could be more. Why just stop at one Zelda release? There could be more. We talked about what Microsoft is working on. Could that be a separate project? And is it Zelda related? There's the possibility there. There also could be a Zelda spin-off perhaps. They could easily fit in something else Zelda. If you look at how Nintendo handled Mario's 35th and Mario's 40th, where there were various games coming out, I would not be totally shocked if Nintendo this time around puts out more than just one Zelda game for Zelda's 40th anniversary, and there's a lot of possibilities. And so I'm very much convinced that Zelda's 40th anniversary is going to be the biggest one yet, and it's going to be very exciting for the Zelda fanbase. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care.